Hello, everybody. Welcome on the Lights on Data show. Today, we have the pleasure of addressing the topic of leading in the age of data.
And our guest today is Ben Jones. Welcome, Ben. Welcome back to the show.
Oh, thanks a lot. Yeah, appreciate it. Hi, George. Hi, Diana.
Hey.
So, Ben, just a quick introduction of our guest today. He also teaches, he writes, and he speaks at conferences. He is the author of several books and the co-founder and CEO at Data Literacy. He recently published a book called Leading in the Age of Data, and this is going to be our topic today. It's a book that is all about what it takes to be a good leader in our era of data and analytics. Well, congrats on the new book, and it's good to have you back, Ben.
Oh, it's great to be back on the show. And yeah, thanks. It was nice to get that one done. It was a good year of writing, and I really enjoyed the
Wow.
process. So yeah.
And you've done a lot of research on it, as we know. So we're excited to be able to access it now. So in your book, you share the 7 critical data leadership factors. Can you tell us which are these factors? And maybe if you have a favorite one, which one it is and why?
Sure. So there are 7 factors, as you said. Those are ethics, purpose, the data itself, technology, people, process, and culture. So those are the 7. My favorite, I would say, is culture. We save the best for last, maybe. But we start with maybe the most important and the often neglected ethics category. So that's how we get the book started. And for your show listeners, we'll have a nice little discount code for them set up. So they get 30% off those, the Leading in the Age of Data ebook and the Data Literacy for Leaders course. Just put in there LODS 23, and that should get them that discount there.
Beautiful. And Diana mentioned that you have done quite a bit of research for this book too, and you have this proprietary data literacy score. And you were mentioning that it definitely has revealed some patterns of successful data leadership. And it's split into, yes, go ahead.
So for the last almost 4 years now, we've been helping organizations assess their level of data literacy. And so that's through that assessment that you just mentioned. And it's a team-based assessment and it's subjective, but through that lens, we've been able to see pain points that keep surfacing over and over again. And so that's really what has informed this book, to help leaders address those pain points that seem to be pretty common in small and large organizations alike. So that was the goal. And we wanted to share some of that wisdom, and we wanted to give some advice to go along with it, some tips for people to maybe set their team up for success. The leader doesn't have to be the most knowledgeable person on the team. They don't have to know all the most advanced tools and the latest tools, but they do have to know how to clear out their barriers for their team. Right. They have to know how to make sure their team has what they need. And they need to know how to address problems as they arise, friction points that occur that are preventing their team from making headway and actually leveraging the data that they have.
And what do you find that this topic nowadays is really so crucial for leaders?
So a lot of us, like my generation, even those of us who got formal education in STEM, like I have a mechanical engineering degree, and I don't even know if they taught us Excel. That was at UCLA. So many of us, right? We're in this role. We've been growing. We've been developing. We're in leadership roles now, but we haven't really been given the tools, and nor even maybe the awareness of what needs to be done in order to help our teams be successful. So that's important. That becomes a skill gap. That becomes a leadership gap. And I don't know about you, but I've worked for leaders in my career that have done really well, but I have worked for others that have gotten in the way. I've worked for other leaders that have even made things worse with regard to data. It isn't either that the leader helps you succeed or not. Sometimes what they do can be very, very harmful and can be very damaging to the ethical situation or morale, or even just blocking advances that the team could be making. So I think that's part of why it's so important, because leaders can either help or hinder, and they don't really always know which one they're doing.
Absolutely, yeah.
They can have the best intentions and still get in the way, right?
Yeah,
So
that's right.
From an audience perspective, who is your book addressed to? So clearly leaders. Is there anyone else who might benefit from the contents of your book?
Yeah, so when I think of a leader, that could be anyone with either a handful of direct reports or more, all the way up to an executive. It's a question of applying the principles at different levels of scale. And of course, it's written for people who want to grow into a leadership role as well. So if that's your aspiration, maybe you're in a role where you can see yourself becoming uh, promoted into leadership, you want to make sure you know how to approach some of the challenges that are going to be right there in front of you, to know which ones they're going to be so that you can see it when it comes, so you can have your eyes open. So it's written for people who are aspiring leaders as well. And what's interesting about the book, as we were writing it and then making the course that goes along with it, is that I think people maybe assume it's for data leaders, like people in IT or analytics leadership positions, but it's really not. It's written for people, and the examples and exercises we put in there cover all the departments: marketing, HR, finance, facilities. All of these departments have leaders in them now. They don't see themselves as data leaders, but they are. And so in that sense, it's a very broad audience, you know. In fact, if I were to just think about the answer I gave you, who would it not include? That becomes a challenging question, because I think we all play a role in helping our teams become successful.
I'm curious, Ben, as you engage with a lot of individuals, a lot of companies, and you were also assessing their data literacy scores, have you encountered companies that are data driven or data informed? They are fairly
Mhm.
competitive in that space, but their data literacy overall is low.
Yeah, no doubt. I've worked with organizations that are just getting started on their data literacy journey, even where there's some pushback from the rank and file about how data could be used. We've received responses from this survey from people who are field based, who don't really feel data is relevant to them, or they feel like maybe it even is a threat to them. So there are some of those perspectives as well that some organizations need to work with and address. But there are some organizations that are doing this really right now. Some I'm thinking of, for example, there are some industries, this one client of ours in particular, that has really had a wake up call with cybersecurity. So, and it was in their industry, it didn't happen to affect them, but that was a wake up call from the top to the bottom of the organization. They're focused on that and making sure that they are taking the lead in their industry with regard to safeguarding their data security, data privacy. And so, again, it's because of a threat that they became aware of that was very real to them. It hit home. It really, I think, motivated them.
Hmm.
And even our interactions with them took on a totally different tenor and tone after that point. And we felt it as a vendor, how seriously they were taking that topic. So I think that situations can arise that can result in an organization pivoting and becoming very focused on data. And that, I think, is usually a key indicator of one that is going to be maturing pretty quickly. And there are so many scenarios in which you could wake up to some kind of an existential threat as a business. Are we going to be able to be viable? Can our leaders rally around common purpose
Mm.
to either take advantage of an opportunity or make sure we're taking care of particular risks or threats? So I've seen some of that where there's no longer complacency, there's no longer kind of a lack of clarity around what's needed.
Yeah,
And that can be a great motivating force for all of the leaders to get on board.
beautiful.
Sounds very promising. Where does this passion of yours for data literacy come from?
Where does it come from? When I moved to Seattle to help Tableau lead the Tableau public platform, my team was traveling around teaching journalists, and many of them were realizing that there was an opportunity in data journalism, but in their career and in their education, for many of them, data wasn't their forte. In fact, far more than that, I would say they were data phobic. And so
Mm.
I really got excited about that light bulb moment and being a part of it for someone where they realized for the first time they can do things with data that they never thought was possible before. So at that same time, I started teaching at the University of Washington
Yeah.
and had that same experience with other students. So that's part of it. I just really enjoy being part of helping someone develop confidence. On the other part of it is realizing how big the gap is. The more I taught and trained, the more I realized that I was trying to teach them a software tool, but they didn't understand data concepts. And so that was a big stumbling block for them. Not so much the features and the menu items and the clicks and the drags and the drops of the software, but understanding what was possible, understanding what pitfalls to watch out for. Those sorts of experiences hadn't been accumulated for them yet. And so they were struggling. And that's where I realized I don't really want to just help teach one software tool. I want to help people speak a language that they've never learned before. And if they could do that, they could be part of a dialogue and it would be really great for them. And so I think that's probably why. And I also really wanted to start my own business. And this became the first real opportunity after business school where I realized that this is viable. This is an important need, and it's one that I'm good at and I enjoy doing. So it had that combination of those overlapping Venn diagram circles. So that's why I went for it 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago now, just shy of.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Can't believe it's been 5 years. And yeah, I
So
remember
many
I was.
accomplishments along the way. Congratulations
Yeah.
for that. And
Yeah,
thank you for doing that, because I definitely understand what understanding the language of data can do for someone, especially me not coming from the data field. Being able to understand what is being said and also contribute to it from my part of the business is actually very empowering, and it's very helpful for both sides, right?
I love that about you too. And the reason is because, first of all, it's just awesome that you partner like that. That's what Becky and I do. So my wife, Becky, she, after about a year of me running the business, she left Amazon. It was a pretty tumultuous year in her life, but she had something happen that made her realize she didn't want to just keep working at Amazon, even though it was a great job. It was a very stressful scenario, and she left and she joined the company. And so she now runs pretty much all of our sales and operations, business development, and helps me do what I do. I couldn't have produced as much as I've been able to produce without her running the business day in and day out. But she says the same thing. She says, "You're the data expert, but I'm not. When you make something, I have to be able to get it. If I don't understand it, then you've got to go back to the drawing board then and make it easier to understand, because we are trying to help people that don't have a background in data, that are petrified by the idea, and certainly don't feel like they're insiders, and maybe in some cases don't even think they have what it takes to become one." And so, yeah, it's been great for me to be able to, we just are finishing a course. It's actually a revamp of what we consider, I guess, our flagship course, which is Data Literacy Fundamentals. And it's almost all teed up and ready to go. We're going to start our beta program either today or Monday. We have to see if there's a couple of things fall into place. Yeah. But she is the ultimate beta tester. And so she's the last one. She says, okay, when you're all done, you think you've got it, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to take it. And I'm going to come back to you guys and say, hey, here are the things that I think could really make it a lot better. Or here are the places that it just didn't help me understand it. So yeah, that's been a really great source of input for us. And yeah, so I think and I've learned so much from her about running a business. She's done it before. So I've been able to learn from her as we've been able to go along. But yeah, it's fun to have partners that are weak where you're strong, and vice versa. And you can really together do a lot more.
Oh, for sure. And it's amazing again how much, congratulations.
That's really amazing.
How much you to have accomplished in this past 5 years, and all the books that he published and all the courses, and plus the keynotes and trainings that he do. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really always wanted to be able to have time to do this sort of thing. When I was at Tableau, it took me 5 years to write Avoiding Data Pitfalls. And that was painful for me. Weeks would go by when I would just have no time or energy to make any headway at all. I really feel lucky that my editing team at Wiley was so understanding and patient. Shout out to Bill Falloon over there.
Yeah.
And then when I left, I realized, well, we wanted to start our own publishing arm, which we have done. And so we publish our own books now, as well as books of other people, other authors. And so that's accelerated quite a bit. Yeah, I think since I left Tableau, I've written 4 or 5 of them. So that's great. That feels really, it's just what I love doing. So if you can find a way to put yourself in a situation where it's not just that you can do what you love doing, it's that you have to do what
Yeah,
you love doing. You
yeah,
have to do it. If you
yeah,
don't, then that's really what makes you able to pay your own bills. So yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
George has
And
been wanting to write a book for a while now,
a
but
while,
it's
yeah,
the
but
same.
like you said, with the work is sometimes
Yeah.
draining and you don't have that energy, even though you might have the time.
Yeah.
Anyways, excuses. But
I've been there. I've been there.
Ben, yeah, I'm glad that you also mentioned and you gave kudos to your publisher. And that makes me think that collaboration in general really is essential for any
Mhm.
informed, data driven business. Do you have any tips on how leaders can foster that culture of collaboration
Yeah.
in their environment?
Yeah. So since we've been publishing our own books with Data Literacy Press, we've had a few talented individuals that we've really tapped, people who can design great book covers, people who can do copy editing, people who can produce the book in ebook form. And those are all sources of talent that we've been able to tap into. We didn't know how to do those things. And if we tried to do it ourselves, probably wouldn't have gone that well. And the same is true with the leader in a scenario where they're having a team. Different people are going to play different roles. And the question is, like an orchestra, can you get them to play well together? I think a pitfall to avoid is that might create a culture on your team where people feel like they have to know everything, or people feel like it, have to be, they can't have areas of weakness or areas where they themselves aren't knowledgeable. And if that's the culture on your team, then it's going to be very difficult to get people to work together because they're not going to trust each other. They're going to feel threatened by someone else's strong suit. That is just something that makes me feel like I'm not going to be able to get promoted or get ahead. I think it's good to make sure as a leader that your team members know they don't have to do it all. And in fact, with data, when you think about the workflow, there's no way that someone could do it all. That would be very challenging to go through all the steps required to set up a highly performing data warehouse, do the analysis themselves and the data prep, make an amazing data story. To own every step of that would be pretty impractical. And even if you are somehow a unicorn that can do all of those steps, you're not going to be able to do it very much because there's so much
Mhm.
involved there. So, yeah, I think you're right. Tapping into other sources of skills, tapping into whether it's on the team or not, the leader plays that role in making sure if there's a skill that's missing, you're either hiring for it or you're partnering with someone else that can provide and can fill that gap. So, as a leader, you're almost like I said, the analogy of the conductor of the orchestra, or maybe a coach of a team. You're trying to see where you're strong and where you have some gaps, maybe
Right.
some skill gaps, knowledge gaps, and then you have to find out how to close those gaps. That's the leader's job, to find out how to close the gaps.
And of course, with your book, you're also helping them with that by offering ways for them to identify those strengths and those gaps in different areas. In fact, you are offering a lot of actionable strategies, right, for those to
Yeah,
lead their own data teams.
yeah. There are 49. So 7 times 7. There's 7 categories. Each one of the 7 categories has 7 guiding principles, and that's the structure of the assessment we do. There's 50 questions. There's one overarching question, and then the 7 times 7 or 49 make up the scoring question portion of the assessment. So then, what we did is we said, and this made the writing process very easy. I just had to say, okay, I need to explain the issue, the
Hmm.
topic, as well as the pain points associated with it, and give them actionable strategies, give them advice
Hmm.
and tips, things to do for each one of those 49. So when I started to write the book it was November, I'll never forget it. It was November 29th of last year, which was the
Wow.
day
Mhm.
before OpenAI launched ChatGPT. That the very day before is when I started writing it. But I just had to go through and write 49 of these little segments, a few pages each, 2 to 5 pages for each one of these 49. So it made the writing process really fun. It made it
Hmm.
really enjoyable. I didn't have this feeling that I had a huge mountain to climb. All I needed to do was work on this next little leg of the journey
Hmm.
and go back to that assessment and say, okay, what are the issues? And then become very creative about what people could do to address them. and to evaluate, are these issues that are really relevant to me in my situation right now? How do I find the ones in these list of 49 that I need to focus on more than the others? And either that's because it's a problem in my team, or it's because in some cases, maybe I haven't even thought of that topic or issue. I didn't even really think that it had anything to do with me, like
Yeah.
ethics. Maybe
Yeah.
people aren't thinking that's their job, but it really does start at the top. Yeah, so that made it fun for me to write it. I think it makes it pretty fun to read it because you could just read maybe one a week and you'd get through it in a year and you'd have some things to think about. We created like a little, what we call a data leadership compass. So you can score yourself in each one. And then when you're done, you have this compass that shows you which of these 7 vertices on the compass for the 7 categories are your strong suits. And I'll just call it what it is, which are your weaknesses. Sometimes try to call that an opportunity, but we can be weak in things and it's okay to
Yeah.
realize that and to try to shore that up with some steps to take. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the way I wrote it. And hopefully that'll let people go through the book and the course, and those stand alone, by the way. The book itself would be helpful in this regard, but the course gives you the templates as well to go through that process. But I just want to help people get targeted. It's hard you can't focus on 49 things right now. That's not anything a human can do. Maybe a computer can, but I certainly can't. So I need to pick a few. And then I need to know where to start.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to help them do.
And of course, then somebody can reread the book maybe a year or two afterwards and rescore themselves and see how they have changed.
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime you change roles, anytime, even in the same role over time, the environment's going to change. Like I described with that client of ours who is so laser focused on cybersecurity. It wasn't like that when we started working with them a few years ago, at least not to the same degree. So that would be a good example of someone would go back and realize that the climate has changed and it's now time for them to focus on different things. And I like that about the leadership challenge. It means you're never really finished. You're always just
Yeah.
able to shift your focus to
Mm-hmm.
find new ways to increase your effectiveness.
Right.
There's a lot of levers to pull.
Yeah. I have to ask a selfish question. And that is, so I'm writing my PhD, and part of it is on a digital culture. I wanted to ask you can you share maybe one of those 7 parts for culture?
Yeah. So the question to date that's scored at the very bottom, the one that people give the lowest score overall out of 50, is in culture, actually, is in the culture category. And it's basically asking whether they feel like they have thriving data communities they can tap into in order to continue to learn and grow their own data skills. So the question of thriving data communities is at the very bottom. And I don't think people feel many people don't feel that they have that available to them. Okay, so knowing that, as a leader, you might say, it's not my job to put them in a community somewhere. It's my job to have my team succeed. But the good news for a leader is you can tap into a lot of other communities that are out there. There are user groups, there are different meetups, book clubs. Even within your own team, you could find ways to help them connect with others who might be doing the same thing, but on a different team, break down some of those silos, get them together. And it can take a lot of time and energy to run a community. So a starting point could be to tap them into other communities, to have someone on the team do some research. Let's say maybe they happen to be using Power BI quite a bit. You could ask one of your team members to find Power BI groups, virtual or local, and you could let the team members know about that. You could also maybe say this team is working with survey data quite a bit, but they're not the only ones in the company working with survey data. There's other people that have the same need. And I'm going to talk to my peers and have them connect so that our survey people are talking to theirs and they're comparing notes. So they just meet once a month, let's say maybe, and they just chat about some techniques they're using or some new tools they're using. And that then would give people the ability to learn from each other, to have conversations with others who are doing similar things. And again, that's at the very bottom of the list. So it's not scoring very well.
Hmm.
But the good news is there are some easy things to do to get started with that. And I think that's one way to consider making headway very quickly in a very common pain point.
I do encourage everybody to want to learn more and to go and purchase Leading in the Age of Data, your guide to the 7 factors of team empowerment at your local Amazon or on dataliteracy.com. And of course, you can also check out any of the additional courses and even self-assessments.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
great. Absolutely. Yeah. 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 And I really hope to hear back from people. What do they think about it? What do they feel was helpful? I love that. That really is, I know for me and my whole team, it really gives us a lot of wind in our sails to know that we're spending time on things that are helping people. So yeah, feel free to reach out anytime. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to hear from you directly. Just email me right into my inbox at bjones@dataliteracy.com, and would love to have a conversation with you about it. We're starting up little coaching sessions, just spending 45 minutes at a time with people that want to talk through some of their own leadership challenges, some of their own concerns, or just want to bounce off of us their thoughts or whatnot. So you can find that on our solutions page. There's a little form to fill out there, and we'll get in touch. And yeah, happy to have the first 3 people from your show that do that just spend 45 minutes with me for free. We'll just chat. I'd love to get to know. Yeah, that would be great for me to hear what sorts of challenges you have, so we can talk through that.
Wow. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Ben
you bet.
Jones, for this. So again, the code for the book is LODS 23. That's amazing. So make sure you look into Leading at the Age of Data.
Yeah,
Thank you,
beautiful.
everyone. Thanks,
Thank
Joyce.
you.
Thanks, Deanna.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Yep.
Ben.
so
Talk to you
much.
soon.